This morning, money from the first stimulus hasn't even rolled out yet. Already, lawmakers are talking about the need for another. Texas Congressman Colin Allred explains why that might be necessary. The coronavirus has put hundreds of thousands of Texans out of work. When will this state see the peak? And will the governor enact any further restrictions? Questions we will ask him. Conservatives said we can't destroy the economy while trying to fight off the virus. But have recent developments changed minds? State Senator Paul Bettencourt is with us from Houston. And one crisis lost around the coronavirus, the collapse in oil prices. The Permian Basin, Houston, both hit hard. Are low prices at the pump good or bad for this state?
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good morning. We have lots of guests to get to across the state this morning, but first, I want to get you caught up on the top political headlines we are watching. Texas knew a pandemic was coming. Back in 2015, lawmakers created a plan. Bud Kennedy wrote about it in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram last week. The state was going to spend upwards of $5 million to stockpile surgical masks and other medical equipment. The Senate passed it, but then members of the right and the left killed it in the House. If you're required to work from home, why not take a few minutes to fill out the census? COVID-19 forced field operations to be canceled for the census. Right now, about 2/3 of Texans have not yet filled it out. Remember, to keep someone from knocking on your door, just fill it out online. Go to census.gov. And Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher from Houston had a scare with COVID-19. She was fighting flu-like symptoms and had a fever. The Congresswoman got a test for the coronavirus, and fortunately, it was negative. She is still working from home, though. Stimulus checks will not show up in your mailbox for another couple of weeks, probably. But this weekend, small businesses have begun applying for money to help them pay salaries. Problem is, it is first come, first served, and already lawmakers suggest more legislation might be needed, potentially another stimulus. Congressman Colin Allred is our first guest this morning. The Dallas Democrat is on Skype with us from his home. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said there is likely need for another stimulus package. Who would that one benefit?
Well, we have a few holes that we're going to have to fill. First of all, we're going to have to probably do another round of direct payments to individuals. We've already heard that small businesses are having a hard time getting access to some of the funds that we have made available, and so we'll have to do something there. And we'll also have to support our cities and our counties and our municipalities that are taking on enormous costs right now. We had a lot of money in the last package for that, but for towns that were under 500,000 people, which I have several of those in my district, you're not getting the direct support. It's coming through the state first, and we want to try and take care of that as well.
Congressman, how soon might something be under consideration?
Well, I think we're talking about it right now. We've had conversations all throughout this week. I've been on conference calls all day long with our caucus talking about what the various options will be. This is what we're considering to be the mitigation phase of this, where we're trying to get through the immediate crisis that we have. And then we will move into the recovery phase, which you've actually, I think, seen the president talk about as well, which is potentially doing something on infrastructure, trying to recover as we come out of this, and will likely be in a worldwide recession.
Let's talk about this first stimulus that's out there now. It's called the CARES Act. Do you think this will be enough to keep small businesses afloat for the next 2 or 3 months?
Well, the intention is to create the Paycheck Protection Program, which is hundreds of billions of dollars that we put into this program to allow small businesses to keep folks employed, to keep them on the books. And if they've already laid off those folks, they can bring them back and they can get access to this loan and have that loan forgiven. And so the idea here is to keep people paid through this immediate crisis. But if the money's not getting out there, or if the administration of the process is too clunky, then we understand that's going to get in the way. And so that's what I'm watching to see. We've done several Zoom meetings with our local chambers of commerce to try and talk about how this is working. I've asked and sent out surveys to our small businesses in the district, asking them, how is this working for you? So we need to get feedback as well, so we can plug that into the next bill if more is needed to be done.
And Congressman, part of the Paycheck Protection Loan Program, you guys made it available to banks so you could expedite this and get the money immediately to these small businesses that need it. Bank of America, the second largest bank, was the first one to physically get this going. And we're already hearing from all kinds of customers who say, hey, I'm a small business. I don't have any debt, and because of that, I cannot apply for this. Apparently, Bank of America is telling us that they're only processing loans for stimulus if you have a previous loan from them. So you have to have debt in order to qualify for a loan. Is that the intention of what you guys wrote in the bill?
No, it's absolutely not. We're trying to get to every small business, the mom and pop shops that are out there, the self-employed even that are out there. And some of these folks have not, as you mentioned, have not accessed credit before or needed to do that. And so this is their first time having to go through this process. But we are actually here to help with this. My office can help. If you are a small business owner or if you're self-employed and you want to get access to one of these loans, you can give us a call. Go to my website, allred.house.gov/COVID-19 small business. We have a guide there that you can download that will walk you through the steps. You can also give us a call and we can connect you with the Small Business Administration. But to the lenders out there, we're going to have to oversee what they're doing and make sure that it's not just the most sophisticated folks who are getting access to this funding, because those are also the folks that will probably be able to handle this crisis the best. We need to get this out there to the folks who are employing people and get it out there as soon as we possibly can.
And to reiterate, Congressman, is there a message you have for Bank of America or for anyone else that might prioritize some of their small businesses over others?
Well, I understand that they have existing relationships, but that should not be the number one criteria here. There's enough money available that as long as they have capacity to take loans and to take applications, they should be issuing those loans as quickly as possible. These are 100% federally backed loans. They are in no danger of losing any money as a bank. And we have to get this money out there to make sure that we keep people employed through this crisis. Otherwise, we're going to see huge spikes, as we already have, of course, in unemployment and reliance on other government programs. And we're trying to keep these folks employed so that when we restart the economy, they can get right back to work and we won't have as long of a period of ramping back up.
Congressman, you've held 3 town halls so far. What is the biggest question your constituents have for you?
Well, in the most recent one that we had over 8,000 folks join on a telephone town hall, we got a lot of questions about the unemployment process. As you've seen, with over 6 million applications and Texas having a huge spike, the Texas Workforce Commission has been overloaded and folks are not able to get through. And we've been told by the Texas Workforce Commission to recommend that folks call or go to their website early in the morning or later in the day when the traffic is lower. That's really an unacceptable scenario. And one of the things we have discussed is making sure that we support the states that are going to be administering our unemployment program going forward. So unemployment has been a huge part of that. But there's still a lot of concerns about the actual virus itself. We're battling misinformation, frankly, Jason, on what is happening, on how safe it is, on whether or not this is really the crisis that we all know that it is. And so we're still battling that, too.
All right. Congressman Colin Allred, a Dallas Democrat, thanks for being here, and stay safe, stay healthy.
Absolutely. You too, Jason.
We've said all along that the economic toll is going to be worse than the health toll. That's playing out now. 275,000 Texans filed for unemployment last week. That's up from 155,000 the week before. So what does this do to the Texas economy, the state budget? It's something that state officials and lawmakers are looking at right now, along with Ross Ramsey as well. He's the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune, and Austin Forrest on Skype at his home. Good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. You know, even if this only lasts for a couple of months, this is not going to be easy to unwind, economically speaking, and it's no doubt going to affect the state budget when the legislature returns in January, right?
Yeah, it stops the economy cold, and really the question is how long does it stop the economy cold, and how fast when we get out of this is the recovery from it. The worst numbers are starting to come in, or the bad numbers are starting to come in. Unemployment up 1,600%, which is kind of what everybody said it would be, but it's really shocking to see it actually occur, and it's particularly shocking to the people who are now unemployed and seeking benefits.
And Ross, you bring up a good point for folks who are working at home or have kids at home too. It's pretty darn difficult in at least a third of the state because there's no broadband in a lot of Texas that many people probably don't realize.
Yeah, you can go virtual, but only if you have either access to broadband, which 94% of Texans do, or you have broadband in your home, which only about 66% of Texans do. So a third of Texas doesn't have the means to do school, do work, do church, do all of the things virtually that some of us are able to do.
Wow. All right, Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, conservatives said we cannot destroy the economy while trying to fight off the virus. Have recent developments, though, changed minds? State Senator Paul Bettencourt is with us from Houston in just a moment. And is Governor Abbott willing to enact more strict measures in this state? It's one of the questions I asked him. That interview is straight ahead. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Tens of thousands of Texans are out of work right now. We've heard from many of you, and on the most recent episode of our Y'all-ticks Political Podcast, we're taking your questions straight to the Texas Workforce Commission. You know, getting through online, on the phone, or anywhere else has really been one of the hardest parts, you guys are telling us. The state has hired 100 new employees to help. They've reassigned several hundred other workers, and right now are trying to partner with other agencies to get to everyone. So how do you listen to our conversation with the Workforce Commission? You can pause this program and point your phone or your tablet's camera to this QR code. It's going to take you to the latest episode, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button as well. Conservatives have complained that our leaders are killing the economy while trying to fight this coronavirus. We've heard a lot of that last week, but also in that time, the coronavirus has spread to at least half of the counties in our state. It's infected more Texans. So have conservatives changed their mind? State Senator Paul Betancourt is a Republican from Houston, and he joins us by Skype this morning. Senator, thanks for being here.
No, thank you. Jason, that was a great lead about the Workforce Commission.
We're going to talk about that in just a second here. I wanted to ask you first, though, Senator, if you're one of the many who have said, is the cure really worth what we're destroying the economy for? Have you changed your mind at all in recent days?
Well, let me say this. I'm not sure what you're characterizing, because I've got a Democrat socialist county judge named Hidalgo. And she initially had a concept of her shelter-in-place order that was very stringent. In fact, I heard from county sources that even the petrochemical industries would be shut down. So I spoke out very quickly that we have to make sure that we keep the economy open and we fight the virus at the same time. We can't afford just to shut down the economy because at that point in time, there's simply no money for payroll, no money for people to pay their bills, their taxes, etc. Now, by the time she started her press conference, she still didn't have her order written. So we had to wait 7 hours from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, whether or not 100,000 employers would even know what the restrictions were going to be.
Do you think more of these companies should be open? Senator, do you think more of these companies should be able to reopen right now?
Well, the fact is that when we finally got through with looking at the order, there were lots of exemptions in it. And what I think we have to do is be mindful of every time we take a step, we have to balance the fact that we're going to put people in a position where employers and employees have less money because they have less payroll, they have less revenue.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that I'm advocating for both because, listen, I didn't speak, actually I spoke in favor of shutting down large events like South by Southwest, the rodeo, because when you look in the historical literature of what happened in the pandemic back in 1918, cities like San Antonio and St. Louis did much better than Philadelphia, who their city fathers were dumb enough to have a parade with 200,000 people in it out of 860,000 in population, and 3 days later, they look like a giant up and down, spike on their hospital bed.
Yeah, I've read that. Listen, you brought up the county judge down there. There's a big debate going on in Houston about whether to release 1,000 inmates. The county judge, Lena Hidalgo, says these are nonviolent inmates, all over the fears of coronavirus spreading in the jail. What do you think about this?
Well, she's wrong because she's doing a judicial order and she's not a judge. She hasn't taken the oath. She's an administrator and she just can't order the stuff. Now, when this first started happening this weekend, her initial order, as best we could tell, had 7,800 names on it. The entire population of the jail was on the list that was being debated with the federal judge between the county and the plaintiffs. And I think, quite frankly, there was collusion to release a very large number. So I picked up the phone, talked to the feds, talked to Attorney General Ken Paxton, called Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and said, look, this would be a very bad situation because while the county judge considers the jail a ticking time bomb for coronavirus, you put that type of population out on the streets and you're going to have a crime bomb in Harris County in Houston.
Yeah, it's a situation we're going to follow. We've talked to the police chief, Houston's Art Acevedo, and he's been very critical of actual judicial judges who are giving low bonds on this. Senator Betancourt, we appreciate you taking time to join us this morning. We're going to circle back with you on this and see how it plays out. Best wishes to you. Stay healthy, sir.
Same to y'all, and just remember, some of those bonds were so low that somebody that actually stole up to several tens of thousands of dollars had a bond for $1 by one socialist judge, and they got out of jail. That's not the type of justice system we need in a pandemic.
It's certainly not what Texas justice is known for. Senator Betancourt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are a couple of questions at the center of this entire pandemic. How much longer is it going to last? And will we see any further restrictions across the entire state? Those are two questions we had for Governor Abbott. Governor, thanks for the time. Let's get right to it. Based on projections you are seeing right now, Governor, when do you think that the coronavirus might peak in Texas?
Most importantly is where these projections are coming from. And the estimation for the nation is that we may hit the peak here in the next 10 to 15 days, with the peak in Texas maybe coming 1 to 2 weeks after that.
You have tightened your executive orders as COVID-19 has spread to almost half the counties in Texas. Governor, I'm curious though, what further restrictions would you consider imposing if the situation does deteriorate?
First, so everyone can understand, what my most recent executive order does, it pretty much aligns all of the state, meaning that it adopts practices that currently exist in Dallas County and many other urban counties, and it applies it to the entire state. And it essentially says this: if you are not involved in providing an essential governmental service in the state of Texas, you need to stay home. We need to do everything we can to avoid the spread of the coronavirus, and the best way to do that is to stay at home. That said, understand this, and that is, if people refuse to abide by this policy, if people continue to gather in ways that transmit the coronavirus, if we continue to see the numbers go up, I must remain flexible in what the standards are, and I would have to consider even a stiffer standard, because we have one collective goal, and that is to reduce deaths, to reduce the number of people testing positive for the coronavirus, and to get this behind us. Now is the time when we can all come together, all work together to get this done and get it behind us.
Governor Abbott, thank you for the time. We spent a lot of time on the political response to the public health emergency, but there is something we haven't talked much about: the collapse in oil prices. The Permian Basin, Houston, both hit hard. We'll ask if low prices at the pump are good or bad for Texas. Next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross is back. Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram is here. And Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas, joins us each week for this segment. Ross, we're starting with you and the collapse in oil prices. This is something we really haven't talked much about. It's really ruining the economy in West Texas. We have seen layoffs at Halliburton in Houston. You know, Bud brings up a good question. Are the gas prices, low gas prices, good or bad for Texas?
Well, I think, if you're talking about the economic effect, the first effect is a bad one. It's knocking the stuffing out of the oil and gas industry out in the Permian Basin. As you said, oil's gone from the mid-50s per barrel down to around $20 per barrel. A lot of people are laying off. And independently of the pandemic, they've got a real crisis on their hands. Ultimately, that all bleeds into the Texas budget, and it's bad news there as well.
Indeed it is, Bud.
Well, every time the gas goes down a penny at the gas pump, when you see gas go down a penny, that means Texas has lost $40 million. That means, people couldn't understand it when the president was celebrating the low price of gas. The low price of gas, sure, it's great for companies shipping goods. There's a lot of that going on. But as far as oil production, that hurts Texas when the gas price goes down.
And Bernadine, Ross touched on it a moment ago. The state budget is pretty reliant on the oil and gas taxes coming in. This is really going to have another big 1-2 punch on the state budget when lawmakers return in January, right?
It definitely will, and there's going to be a challenge as to where they're going to be able to make up that budget. But also keep in mind too that the prices help us as consumers, but we can't go anywhere. Yeah. So we're not necessarily getting a benefit there because we're not driving our cars, but it's going to be definitely a challenge when our lawmakers are trying to make up that budget.
Bud?
Jason, the oil money funds, UT, A&M, the Permanent University Fund, they're down $300 million right now that they can't make up because of this.
I want to switch off briefly to this being the first Sunday, Ross, since Governor Abbott has essentially kind of reopened churches. How much of that was a political decision? Because we saw the same thing with gun stores as well.
Well, I think it is politics. There's a question when you tell churches that they can't gather, whether you're infringing on religious freedoms, and some people contend that you are. Putting people together, we know, is conducive to the coronavirus. So, it may be legal to go to church. It's probably still a bad idea. A lot of other ways to do it, on the phone, on computer, like we're doing right now.
And Bud, that seems like what a lot of churches are actually doing now. So what was the point of this?
Most churches are doing online services, but there are churches in West Texas, like you and Ross talked about earlier, where people don't have computers. They can't do online. Some small churches in this area were doing drive-up services. The governor said that's okay. But really, his order now has left the door open for churches to invite people to come on in. He could set rules and say only 10 people in the sanctuary. He didn't make those rules. He made those suggestions. He can have narrowly tailored rules for a specific reason, for a specific amount of time, limiting freedom.
Bernadine, final word.
But he did leave it up to the local county judges and mayors to come up with some kind of guidelines. But he had to do something, because you had too many members and pastors coming up with their own way of doing service. Yeah. So he had to do something, but he also left it open to local officials as well.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and thank you for watching as well. We'll see you again next Sunday right here for Inside Texas Politics. Remember to keep your distance from others this week, and hope you have a healthy day.